this rivalry has been one-sided over the past 6 years, but for the most part, it's been very close. I mean, I know 2017 and 16 were lopsided games, although 16 was closer for a while, and then it kind of got blown open late, as I recall. But it's been a close series. Obviously, the kicking game has been huge. Miguel Recinos made a last-second kick a few years ago, and, of course, Keith Duncan with his kick in Lincoln. And then you combine that with the fact that Nebraska's played everybody on their schedule close this year. I know that Adrian Martinez being out changes things, but if anybody not predicting a close game Friday would be completely foolish. Now it may be a blowout. I mean, that would be the kind of crazy thing we see in college football, but everything is screaming tight game in this one.
Oh, big time. And I mean, driving down to this morning's press conference, just listen to the radio and you had people talking about, hey, are you surprised that Nebraska's favored in this game? And it's like, no, not really, not surprised at all. I mean, I told my wife Saturday while we were watching the Wisconsin game, I told her, I bet you that Nebraska's actually a favorite against Iowa next week. And sure enough, obviously that spread's probably changed since then.
Yeah.
I haven't looked.
it's down to, so it started at Nebraska by 4, and now it's Iowa by 1.5.
Yeah.
Overnight. It changed from 4 to Iowa 1.5. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And now, I don't mean to trivialize the injury of Adrian Martinez, but somebody asked us on our postgame show last week, do you think Nebraska will be favored? And my first thought is I could see it, but I just kept telling myself there's no way you favor a Nebraska team that hasn't proven that they can beat anybody in a close game. I mean, you're going to make it a close line, but there's no way you can favor Nebraska, whether it's at home or not, even with Adrian Martinez. So I was a bit surprised by that in general, but you knew Iowa fans are going to be flocking to the betting tables on that line, and certainly the news overnight or this morning changes things completely. And here's the other thing, Greg, and I want to bring this up too. One of the other sort of underlying storylines in this game on Friday, at least, I would say Oliver Martin is probably Nebraska's second best wide receiver now. Would that be safe to say?
Going into the year, I might have agreed with that, but he's pretty much been invisible all year after starting off real slow with an injury. So
he's still being used in special teams, right? I mean, he's
the kick or a punt returner, and basically just fair catches it every time. I think he's only had one punt return on the year, so everything else.
But Toure the kid that's really emerged.
Smart Torres, he was already invited to the NFL Combine last year, so yeah, he's going to be playing on Sundays. But yeah, he's taken over, and started to show what he's capable of. I think he just tied Stanley Morgan's record for 100-yard games, and he's right up there. He's probably, I think he is going to walk away with some of the wide receiver records, only being here 1 year. So.
Well, yeah. And that's why I wanted to compare Oliver Martin being there, and obviously he's not.
Oliver Martin, absolutely, I get it. Yeah.
And then you combine the fact that now you've got an Iowa emerging receiver who may be probably no question, Keegan Johnson is the best receiver on Iowa's roster.
I love Keegan. I've known Keegan for.
That's a huge storyline.
Oh, and he is blowing up, and I knew he would. I knew he would have a great career at Iowa, and he's probably not going to play there for 4 years before he starts playing on Sundays. So yeah.
He is really good, and again, Bellevue, Nebraska,
West.
Right?
Bellevue West.
Yep. So it's sort of interesting. Nebraska's got an Iowa City kid, and then Iowa's got an Omaha kid. So, and they're both playing at a skill position spot that I think for Iowa has been a position that has just struggled year in and year out, and now finally you've got a couple guys in Bruce and Keegan Johnson who are emerging with now a mobile threat.
I expect this game is going to end up being a low-scoring game, obviously. Now, especially without Martinez playing, I think you take away a lot of the big play threats of the Nebraska offense. So I think this is going to end up being a grind them out. I think each team might be lucky to score 2 touchdowns. I expect that, Iowa, you guys are going to have to, control the ball do the same thing that most teams would do against Nebraska, and put together those long 10, 12 play drives, keep Nebraska's offense off the field, and try to wear out Nebraska's defense, because Nebraska is very, very deep on the front line, and you saw a couple guys have to come in and fill in for guys on injuries on the front line. Iowa kid Blaze Gunnarsson finally got his chance, and the South Dakota kid Nash Hutmacher, two freshmen that have been around for a couple years because of COVID, but obviously they had a chance, and they played well against a pretty good Wisconsin offense. So yeah, I mean, Iowa's offense, they better bring their lunch pail with them, because Nebraska's going to play physical, and this is the most physical Nebraska defense that Iowa has faced in several years, going back to the Bo Pelini era.
How is Ezra Miller doing? He's another kid that is from Iowa, of course, transferred to Nebraska. I know he played on the O-line early. Has he been getting time on with that unit?
He got a little bit right after Teddy Prohaska went down with a season-ending injury. He did get a little bit of playing time, but some other guys have stepped up in the rotation, and he's back into a backup role right now.
Will we have any clapping allegations? Any blown kisses to the fans? Let's see, what else? What else have we seen in this rivalry over the course of time?
I don't know, but there's a new sponsor though. Shields took over that sponsor. There's no more Hy-Vee, so
okay,
that's kind of surprising.
It's the Shield, so it's the Shields Heroes Trophy now.
Yeah.
There you go, Mark.
Another trophy game in the Big Ten.
Matt Hankins is definitely out this week. We assumed that, so that's disappointing, especially for a kid who he won't be back next year, so he won't play another Big Ten game in his career, barring some unforeseen thing. I think he's lost. I think he's out of eligibility completely. So he'll be out. That's disappointing. Hopefully you get him back for a bowl game. I don't know. Again, I don't know the details on these injuries. Kirk's not really been too upfront about injuries this year, and that's his prerogative. But could he be back for the Big Ten title game if they make it? You get an extra long week, I guess, if you look at it from that perspective, from Friday to the following Saturday night. We'll see there. It sounds like Jack Kerner at free safety has a chance. Sounded like a good chance, but I think Kirk used the word iffy on a lot of these players. A little bit surprising and reassuring to hear that Mason Richmond does have a chance. I did not see him. He was not on the depth chart this week. But just the fact that Kirk says he has a chance is positive news. And if you could get him in a rotation with Jack Plum again at left tackle, I think that helps both players be more effective, and certainly stamina-wise. And then there was a third guy. Who am I missing that's been out? Terry Roberts. That's who I'm missing. And that might be the biggest one for me after Kerner. Richmond would be nice to get back. Kerner's the obvious one. But if you can get Roberts back, I think you've got a clear top two at corner you got a clear top two anyways with Jamari Harris and Riley Moss, but boy, I think you'd love to be able to insert Terry Roberts and at least rotate him in with Jamari Harris, who's gotten burned a time or two. Listen, Mark, Nebraska fans will be incessant if they win this game this year. And it won't matter if you end up and that's a compliment. And that's a compliment to Nebraska fans. We talked about their passion yesterday. It won't matter. I mean, that'll make him 4-8.
Yeah, the record's meaningless at this point. So what? Yeah, you don't have anything to lose, and how about bringing that trophy home for the first time since 2014? So
and ruining Iowa's chances at the West before Wisconsin even plays.
Exactly.
Now, this is Iowa Live, Mark. Let me bring this up. So Don Patterson said to me Sunday. He said, Corey, the good news about the game on the Minnesota-Wisconsin game being played on Saturday is if Iowa wins Friday, that puts more pressure on Wisconsin. Here's the flip side, and this is what I said back to him. I said, well, Don, the other problem with that is Iowa beats Nebraska on Friday. Minnesota is eliminated. So now they have less motivation to beat Minnesota or to beat Wisconsin. So that's what I don't like about the game being on Friday. That's why I'd rather those two games fall on the same day. Can't do anything about it.
No.
I don't know. Any thoughts on on that little scenario, because again, it's either you lose and you're eliminated Friday, or you lose and now Minnesota has less motivation to win. Although I would have to think Minnesota's got motivation either way, given the fact that it's a rivalry game and they're still competing for bowl positioning, and they can keep. I would think Minnesota would rather Iowa go. I mean, Minnesota's rivals with Iowa and Wisconsin, but man, I think that Wisconsin-Minnesota rivalry in 2021 is a more heated rivalry than Iowa-Minnesota. Minnesota's probably got more history there. But I don't know. That's sort of an interesting storyline.
Yeah, it is. Into it.
I would think that motivation would be more of a question for a team or a program that was used to going to conference championships repeatedly, where Minnesota, that game in and of itself against Wisconsin is enormous for them. Sure, there's going to be disappointment there.
Yeah, and I think they're probably preparing this week. I mean, I don't know what the latest line is, but I think, especially with Adrian's news, Minnesota's probably preparing this week like Iowa's likely going to win. I mean, you don't prepare that way either way, but I don't think it'll be like a shock if Iowa beats Nebraska on Friday. It won't be a shock to the Gopher players. And the Gophers also need Purdue to win. So they know it's a long shot at this point, but it is sort of an interesting conversation. And again, I just, that Minnesota-Wisconsin rivalry, I looked back at the series because, you forget year to year, and you don't, Mark, because you remember every score for FBS teams in the past 30 years, it seems like. But I looked back, and man, that rivalry has been very one-sided.
Sure.
From score-wise. And that's why I was putting, as an Iowa guy, putting so much faith on Nebraska winning that game last week, because Nebraska has had Wisconsin's number more than anybody else has. They haven't really beaten Wisconsin as of late, but they play Wisconsin close. They put up tons of yards on Wisconsin. They've obviously Frost has figured out that defense. So that was the disappointment, because to me, I thought there was a better chance that Iowa or that Nebraska would beat Wisconsin than I do Minnesota would beat Wisconsin. It's happened. Now, here's the other thing, Mark. You want to pull out your calculator here for a second. If you look at, and I don't know what ESPN's FPI has for these games this weekend, but if you look at like just what I would predict Iowa's chances of beating Nebraska on Friday, before the Adrian news, I would have said like 55% chance of beating Nebraska. I'm just throwing that number out there. I maybe moved that closer to like 65% now. But say you're 65%, you have a 65% chance of winning that game. And then what would you give Minnesota as far as a chance of beating Wisconsin? I'd say like 30.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. 30, 35. They're at home. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to know chances, then if we're assuming those two numbers are somewhat accurate, then Iowa has a 19.5% chance of winning the West, which isn't very much.
Do you know what the FPI was giving the Iowa-Nebraska odds at before the Adrian Martinez news?
I'm sure it was Nebraska.
They were 55. At 58% Nebraska.
So I wonder where that's moved now. I guess I could look that up. I am curious.
I'm a big critic of the FPI anyway, so I don't think it's valid.
It hasn't moved. I don't know how that works, but it hasn't. It's at 58% still.
Probably haven't updated it.
They probably haven't updated it. But if that's the case, so say you're still looking at 58%, then you're looking at, 42%. And let's just take a look at what ESPN has for the Minnesota game.
Oh, let me guess. Minnesota's at home. I'm going to say Wisconsin's 68%.
They've got Wisconsin 62. So they're giving Minnesota 38%. So 42% times 38%, you're looking at pretty close to what we said earlier, about 16% chance. So Iowa, according to my estimations and ESPN, Iowa has about a 16% chance, 16 to 19% chance of winning the division, which isn't very high, let's be honest. But it's also very, very possible. I mean, it could very, very possibly happen.
Sure.